The first thing you're aware of is not sight, but sound. It's a soft, rhythmic plucking of strings, a sound like raindrops falling on a calm lake. It's accompanied by a voice, deep and resonant, not speaking, but singing. It's your father's voice. He isn't singing a lullaby about twinkling stars or sleepy sheep. He is singing names, a long, flowing river of names, each one connected to the last, a chain of sound that stretches back into a time you can't possibly comprehend. This is your world. You are a newborn, wrapped in cotton, lying it around. Mud brick hut. The air smells of wood smoke, roasted yams, and the dry, dusty scent of the soil. You are born into a family where silence is rare. History isn't a lesson you learn in a formal setting. It's the background hum to your entire existence. When your mother grinds millet in a large wooden mortar, the thud of her pestle keeps time with the genealogy she hums under her breath. When the elders gather under the great baobab tree in the center of the village, their conversation is punctuated by your uncle, who clarifies a point of ancestry not by arguing, but by playing a short, clear melody on a small, lute-like instrument. You don't know it yet, but you are a Griot. That name is your destiny. In the great Mandinka lands, you don't just get a job. You are born into it, and your job is to remember. This is the core of the Griot, or Jeli, tradition. It's a hereditary role, passed down through bloodlines just like the color of your eyes. You are destined to be a guardian of the spoken word, the living archive for your community. As a toddler, you don't learn simple nursery rhymes. Your first lessons are the names of the founding chiefs of your village. Your first stories are not about fictional characters, but about the real deeds of Sundiata, the Lion King who founded the great Mali Empire centuries ago. You absorb it all without understanding, the way a plant absorbs the sun. The rhythms sink into your bones. The melodies wire themselves into your brain. You notice that when your father truly performed, when he stands before the village chi for a wealthy patron, something changes. His voice takes on a certain power, a force that makes everyone stop what they're doing and listen. This is more than just good storytelling. It's an ancient concept, a bit of a strange and fascinating one, known as YMA. It's a spiritual energy, a life force that exists in all things. The Mandinka believe that certain actions, especially speaking the names of the dead or recounting great historical events, can release this powerful, sometimes dangerous, energy. A Griot's training is not just about memorization. It's about learning how to channel and control NYMA with their voice and music, using it to honor, to inspire, and to maintain balance, without letting it run wild. You, as a child, just feel it as a shiver that runs up your spine when your father sings a particularly potent verse. Even in your small world, you can sense the weight of this tradition. The way other villagers look at your family is a mixture of profound respect and a subtle distance. They need you, but you're also different. The exact origin of your role is something even the wisest storytellers don't fully agree on. Historical records from outside observers, like the famous traveler Ibn Battuta, describe the Griots in the court of Mali, but their roots are deeper. Historians today are still in a lively debate about just how far back this tradition goes. Some argue it predates the great empires by centuries, evolving from more ancient court praise singers or clan historians. Others see the formalized, high-status Griot as we know them as a direct product of the imperial structure established by Sundiata himself. The truth is, its beginnings are shrouded in the very mist of time that you are destined to give voice to. For now, you are just a child who falls asleep each night not to silence, but to the gentle, intricate sound of the kora. The music weaves itself into your dreams, a tapestry of names, deeds, and melodies. It is a river of your people's past, and you are just learning how to swim. You are 5 years old now. The world has expanded from the inside of your family's hut to the bustling, dusty pathways of the village. One afternoon, you sit beside your father under the shade of a mango tree as he meticulously replaces a string on his kora. The instrument rests on a large calabash gourd, its long neck reaching up like the elegant head of a crane. The air is thick with the heat of the day, and the drone of insects is a constant. Sleepy song. You finally ask the question that has been buzzing in your mind like those very insects. Father, why do you sing the names? He stops his work, his fingers long and nimble, resting on the new string. He looks at you, his eyes patient, and a small smile touches his lips. Because, my child, he says, his voice is soft as the worn leather on the kaya his handles. We are what is known as Griots, or, more correctly, Jeli. It is not just what we do, it is what we are. He gestures to his head, then to his heart. Others build their houses from mud and wood. We build our house from memory. Others store their grain in granaries. We store our history in song. He leans closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Imagine a library. In the great city of Timbuktu, to the north, they have libraries made of paper and ink, a building full of stories. But what happens if that building burns? What happens if the ink fades or the paper is eaten by termites? He pauses, letting you think about it. The stories are gone. Forever. We, he says, tapping your chest gently, are a library made of people. The stories, the laws, the family trees, the great battles, the secret treaties. They are not on a shelf. They are in here. They cannot burn. They cannot fade. As long as a Jeli breathes, the history of our people breathes with them. You are not just a boy. You are a book. Then one day, you will be a whole library. This is the first time you've heard it explained so clearly. A living library. It's a huge, almost frightening thought. Your father continues, explaining the different facets of your calling, what he calls Jeli, the art of being a Griot. You are a genealogist, the one who knows who can marry whom, who has rights to which piece of land, because you can trace their lineage back through 10 generations. You are a historian, the one who can recount the epic of Sundiata, the founder of the Mole Empire, not just as a story, but with the names of his generals, the sequence of his battles, and the wisdom of his edicts. You are also a royal advisor. He tells you that the Mensa, the king, has his council of chiefs and warriors, but his Griot is his memory. How can a king rule justly if he does not remember the promises his grandfather made? He asks, how can he avoid a war if he has forgotten the ancient marriage that tied two great families together? We are the ones who remind him. We speak truth to power, even when that truth is uncomfortable. This leads to a fascinating, and somewhat odd, aspect of your identity. Your father tells you about the day he was called to settle a dispute between two families over a patch of farmland. There were no written deeds. The argument was becoming heated. Your father was summoned. He didn't offer an opinion. He simply took out his kora, and for an hour, he sang the lineage of both families, tracing their ancestry, the land grants given by chiefs long dead, the stories of who had found that land and when. By the time he was finished, there was no argument. His word, rooted in the collective memory he carried, was the final verdict. In many ways, a Griot's testimony was as binding as a legal document, but then your father's expression becomes more complex. You must understand, he says, our place is special. He tells you that you will be respected. People will fall silent when you begin to sing. Great men will shower you with gifts for a well-told story or a powerful praise song. But you are also an outsider. You belong to a distinct social group, what some would call a caste. You will never be a warrior or a farmer or a nobleman. You exist in a space of your own. They will honor the words from your mouth, he says, looking at you intently. But some will not eat from the same bowl as you. They see our power with words, with the MYMA we command, as something to be respected from a distance. This paradox is something historians still grapple with. Were Griots a revered and elite class because of their proximity to power and their essential role? Or were they a lower, almost feared caste, because they were artisans who worked for patronage, their craft tied to the dangerous, mystical energy of the spoken word? The truth, as is often the case, is likely somewhere in between. A complex status that doesn't fit neatly into modern categories. You don't understand the full social weight of this yet, but you understand the feeling. You are both essential and separate. Your father finishes with the string. He plucks it, a clean, bright note that hangs in the hot air. This is a kora, he says, holding the instrument up. But it is not just wooden string and chord. It is a key. Each melody, each rhythm, is a key that unlocks a room in the library of your mind. You will learn to use it. You will learn the names, the stories, the laws. The weight of our people's past is a heavy thing, but we are taught how to carry it with song. He looks at you, and you see not just a father, but your first teacher. The journey, you realize, is just beginning. The lessons begin not with grand epics or complex laws, but with a single, unadorned thread of sound. Your training starts in the cool of the pre-dawn, when the rest of the village is still asleep and the only light is the soft gray promise of the sun. You sit on a reed mat across from your father. There is no instrument, no music. There is only his voice, calm and steady in the quiet ear. Listen, he says, and he speaks a name. You repeat it. He was the first of the blacksmith kings. Your father continues, his eyes closed as if HES reading the words from the inside of his eyelids. From him came Suma Orokonte, the sorcerer king, who wore garments of human skin and whose power was great and terrible. You listen, absorbing the cadence of the story. You don't need to understand it all. Your task is simpler and much harder. You must repeat it, exactly, word for word. You try, and you stumble. You say terrible and great instead of great and terrible. Your father's eyes open. There's no anger in them, only a profound seriousness. No, he says, not unkindly. The order of things matters. The story has a rhythm. The rhythm is the path. If you change the path, you will get lost. Again, and so it begins. For weeks, this is your life. You are learning the opening lines of what you will later come to know as the Epic of Sundiata, the foundational story of the Mali Empire. But you are not learning it as a story. You are learning it as a string of pure data. It is an exercise in auditory fidelity, a grueling boot camp for your memory. Every syllable must be perfect. Every pause must be timed. You learn that in your tradition. There is no room for paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is another word for lying. To change the story is to corrupt the past. You learn your first name, then the second, Suma Ora, then the third, and the fourth. Each name is a stone. Then you are building a wall in your mind, placing each stone carefully, ensuring it is perfectly aligned with the one before it. The process is painfully slow. Your father never moves on to the next line until the previous one is flawless. Sometimes you spend an entire morning on a single phrase, repeating it dozens, even hundreds of times, until the words lose all meaning and become pure sound. Pure rhythm. You hate it. Your mind wanders. You get frustrated. You want to go play with the other children who are chasing lizards in the sun. But then, something starts to happen. One day, your father speaks a name from 3 weeks ago, and before he can even finish the sentence that follows, the words spring to your lips and biden, in the right order, with the right intonation. It feels less like remembering and more like resonance, like a string on an instrument vibrating in sympathy with another. You have not just learned the names. You have etched them into the neural pathways of your brain. This method of rote memorization is the bedrock of a Griot's education. It's a mental discipline that has to be forged in childhood. But it's not just about history. A fascinating side effect of this training is its application to everyday life. You begin to notice you can remember the exact pattern of cracks on the gourd you drank from. You can recall the precise sequence of calls a weaver bird made yesterday. Your brain is being rewired, not just for storing information, but for observing the world with an almost supernatural clarity. One evening, your uncle, a master Griot himself, tells you a story that illustrates the stakes. He speaks of a Jeli in his grandfather's time who, during a royal ceremony, accidentally swapped the names of two brothers in a king's lineage. The silence that followed, your uncle said, was colder than any Harmattan wind. It was more than a mistake. It was an insult to the ancestors and a potential challenge to the king's legitimacy. The Jeli was disgraced, his patronage revoked. The story might be an exaggeration, a cautionary tale for young apprentices like you, but the lesson is crystal clear. Accuracy is not a virtue. It is your only currency. The specific origin of this absolute insistence on verbatim repetition is, of course, debated by scholars. Some see it as a practical necessity in a society without widespread literacy, a way to ensure the fidelity of legal and historical records across generations. Others propose a more spiritual explanation, tied back to the concept of NYMA. They argue that the precise, original wording of a story is considered a kind of sacred formula. To alter it would be to risk unleashing the spiritual energy, the NYMA, in an uncontrolled and dangerous way. It's the difference between a chemist carefully mixing a formula and a child randomly pouring chemicals together. You start to understand this on a visceral level. The names are no longer just sounds. They begin to take on weight, personality. You learn of Mansakeon, the first king to hold a great assembly. You learn of the Chor clan and the Konati clan, from which Sundiata himself would descend. These are not just names in a list. They are the beginning of a map of your people, of your empire, and you are its designated cartographer. The training is relentless, a slow, arduous process of building your internal archive, name by name, line by line. It lacks the glamour of performance, the thrill of storytelling. It is the hidden, unglamorous work of laying the foundation. But you are learning the most important lesson of all for a Jeli. History is not a toy. It is a tool, a weapon, and a sacred trust, and it must be handled with care. The day you receive your first kora is a day you will never forget. You are 7 years old, and your hands, which have known only the feel of dust, wood, and the rough fibers of your tunic, are finally deemed ready. Your father doesn't just give it to you. An instrument of this importance is not simply handed over. It is presented. He takes you to the small, windowless hut where he keeps his own revered kora, a place that is always cool and quiet. There, on a woven mat, lies not an instrument, but a creature. That's how it looks to you. It has a large, round body made from a calabash gourd, half a sphere the color of pale sand, covered tightly with a bleached cowhide. From this body emerges a long, slender neck of dark wood, polished smooth by generations of hands. But the most magical part is the strings, 21 of them, shining like silver threads in the dim light, stretching from a ring on the base of the neck, over a tall, notched bridge, and up to leather tuning rings on the neck itself. It doesn't look like something a person made. It looks like something that grew. This was my first, your father says, his voice filled with a rare solemnity. And my father's first before me. It is a small one, for a boy's hands, but it is not a toy. It is your other voice. It is your memory as companion. He shows you how to hold it. You must sit, cradling the gourd body in your lap. The neck points away from you, almost vertically. Your hands don't grasp the neck like a guitar. Instead, they hold two vertical wooden posts, or hand grips, that are fixed through the gourd on either side of the neck. Your thumbs and index fingers are left free. It's an awkward, unfamiliar posture. The strings are into rows, he explains, guiding your fingers. 11 on the left side, 10 on the right. You do not strum. You pluck, with your thumbs and your forefingers. He demonstrates, and a cascade of notes fills the small hut. Clear, bright, and liquid, like water flowing over stones. It is the sound you have heard your entire life. But now, up close, you can see how it is made. It is an intricate dance of 4 fingers, each one responsible for its own set of strings. Your first attempts are clumsy. You pluck a string with your thumb, and it makes a dull thud. Your forefinger slips, creating a scraping sound. The strings feel alien, taut and unforgiving under your soft fingertips. It is more difficult than learning the names. The names required only your mind. This requires a conversation between your mind and your body. Your father is patient. He teaches you the name of each part of the instrument. The gourd is the beta, the body. The cowhide is the lino. The skin, the bridge is the ba2, and the neck is the fa-low. He tells you the instrument is a symbol of the world. The gourd is the earth. The neck is the tree of life. And the strings are the paths that connect all people and all stories. This is when you begin to understand its true purpose. The kora is not just an accompaniment to the song. It is a mnemonic device. It's a beautifully complex, organic piece of hardware designed to support the software running in your mind. Your father explains how a certain melodic pattern, a kumbengo, is played as a rhythmic foundation. Over this, he will play faster, more intricate flourishes, known as biri minting go, to emphasize a moment in the story. But the core melody, the kumbengo, is a key. He plays a simple, cyclical pattern of a few notes. This, he says, is the theme for the House of Troor. Then he shifts his fingers slightly, and a different, more somber melody emerges. This is for the fall of the Oso Empire. Each major family, each historical event, each king and queen has their own musical signature. When you are lost in the labyrinth of 1,000 names, the melody played by your hands is the map that shows you the way out. The music isn't just illustrating the story, it's coding it. It's a surprisingly sophisticated system. One of the more peculiar and debated facts about the kora is its origin. While its oral history is ancient, physical and written evidence of the kora as we know it today, this specific 21st ring flute, only appears with certainty in the historical record around the 18th century, mentioned by the explorer Mungo Park. Yet, the Griot tradition it serves is far older. So what came first? Did the music evolve with more ancient, simpler instruments like the ganai, a small lute, and then transfer to the more complex kora? Or has an early form of the kora been around for much longer than the records suggest? Historians on ethnomusicologists still argue over the timeline, trying to piece together the instrument's family tree. For you, it doesn't matter. This instrument feels as ancient as the baobab tree outside. Days turn into weeks. Your fingertips, at first sore and blistered, develop hard calluses. The clumsy plucking becomes more deliberate. You learn your first kumbengo. It is a simple, repetitive melody, but when you play it, a strange thing happens. The names you have been memorizing for 2 years, the Conte lineage, suddenly arrange themselves in your head, falling into the rhythm of the notes you are playing. It's a revelation. It feels like finding a lantern in a dark room. The music and the words are not two separate things. They are one. The kora is not just a tool. It's an extension of your own mind, a physical manifestation of your memory. Use it for hours. Just you and the small kora. In the shade of the hut, you play the simple melody over and over. And as you do, you recite the names, the stories. They flow more easily now, carried on the gentle current of the music. You are no longer just speaking history. You are giving it a body, a pulse. You are learning the language of the Jeli, a language spoken by the voice in the 10,000-year-old soul of the Kalabish gourd. As you grow, so does your awareness of the world outside your family compound. You start accompanying your father when he performs in the village square or at the modest court of your local chief. You are still just an observer, a small shadow sitting quietly behind him. But you are watching, listening, and learning. It is here that the lessons about your social standing move from theoretical explanations to sharp, lived realities. One evening, the village chief holds a feast to celebrate a good harvest. The air is filled with the smell of roasting goat and the joyful chatter of the community. Your father is called to perform. He stands, and as the first notes from his kora silence the crowd, you feel a familiar swell of pride. He sings of the chief's lineage, connecting him to a noble ancestor known for his generosity. The chief beams, placing a handful of cowrie shells into the bowl at your father's feet. The performance is a triumph. Later, when the food is served, you notice something. While everyone else gathers around communal bowls, sharing food freely, a separate bowl is brought for your father and you. It is the same delicious stew, the same tender meat, but it is set apart. The other villagers are polite, even friendly, but there is an invisible line. A line you are not meant to cross. They admire what comes out of your father's mouth, but they are wary of the mouth itself. This is your first real taste of the Griots paradox. You are respected, yet separate. You are central to the community as identity, yet you exist on its margins. Your father explains it to you later, as you walk home under a sky littered with stars. They respect the message, but they fear the messenger. He says, "We hold the words. Words can build a man up, and they can tear him down. We know the secrets, the glories and the shames of every family. That knowledge is a form of power, and power makes people cautious. You learn that your caste, DNA includes not just Griots, but also other artisans who possess specialized hereditary skills, blacksmiths, sinew, and leather workers, garang. These groups are considered to have a special relationship with the spiritual force. Then, why am I? The blacksmiths command it when they transform earth into iron with fire. You command it when you transform breath into history with words. This power makes you indispensable, but it also makes you different from the HORO, the noble born, and the farmers who make up the majority of the population. This social structure is a fascinating and complex system that predates Islam's arrival in the region and continued to exist alongside it. Historians have long debated the rigidity of this caste system. Was it an immovable social hierarchy, or was there more fluidity? Some evidence suggests that while one was born into their role, a particularly skilled or favored Griot could achieve immense wealth and influence, effectively blurring the lines. Others point to folk tales and social customs that reinforce the strict separation, suggesting that even the most powerful Griot was still, fundamentally, the The truth likely varied from place to place and era to era within the vast expanse of the West African empires. One of the most peculiar examples of this unique status is the Griot's traditional right to beg or demand gifts. It's not begging in the sense of poverty. It's a complex and ritualized form of exchange. A Griot performs for a patron, singing their praises. The patron is then socially obligated to give a gift worthy of the praise. It's a transaction. Your skill for their generosity. To refuse a Griot was to risk public shame, not just through insults, but through the powerful act of the Griot simply falling silent, refusing to acknowledge your existence and thus, in a way, erasing you from the living narrative. You see this in person one day when a wealthy merchant, puffed up with his own importance, offers your father a meager gift. Your father doesn't argue. He just smiles, bows, and for the rest of an evening full of stories, he never once mentions the merchant or his lineage again. It's a subtle, devastating display of power. The man is effectively deleted from the day's history. This also means your livelihood is tied directly to the patronage of the wealthy and powerful. You are not a farmer with land that provides for you. Your wealth is your knowledge, and it must be paid for. This economic dependence adds another layer to your social position. You are an artist, a scholar, a priest of the spoken word, but you are also, in a way, a lifelong contractor, moving from patron to patron. You start to understand why your father carries himself with a careful blend of confidence and humility. He must be bold enough to speak truth to a chief, but humble enough to accept the bowl of food set aside for him. He must be a master of his craft, but also a master of social navigation, balancing on the fine line between respect and resentment, power and dependence. As you sit in the starlight, the chief's feast, a warm memory, and the separate bowl, a sharp lesson, you realize your training isn't just about names and melodies. It's about learning how to walk this line. It's about understanding that you are the voice of your people, a voice that everyone needs to hear, even if they prefer to listen from a safe distance. The sheer volume of it is beginning to dawn on you. The names, the lineages, the succession of kings, the outcomes of battles. It's not a stream of information anymore. It's an ocean, and you are a boy in a tiny canoe, feeling the terrifying depth of it all beneath you. You can recite the line of the Conte Kings. You can play the melody of the Troll clan on your small kora, but connecting them, holding the entire, sprawling web of history in your mind at once, seems impossible. A single thread is easy to hold. 1,000 threads become a tangled mess. One afternoon, you are struggling, trying to recall the name of Sundiata's mother, Sujioel, and confusing her story with that of another chief's wife. You grow frustrated. The name's Jum in your head. Your father, who has been listening silently, stops you. He doesn't correct the name. He simply picks up his own magnificent kora. You are trying to hold the whole ocean in your hands. He says, his voice gentle, you will drown that way. You do not hold the ocean. You learn to navigate it. The library in your mind needs shelves. It needs a system. We will build one for you. This is the beginning of a new phase in your training. Your father introduces you to a technique, a way of seeing your own mind as a physical space. He calls it walking the path, but it's what scholars from a distant land would one day call a memory palace. It's a method of associating information with physical objects or locations in a familiar, imaginary landscape. For a Griot, the most familiar landscape is the kora itself. The kora is not just for your hands, he says. It is for your head. He places your fingers on the instrument. This, he says, tapping the large calabash chord. The beta is the beginning of all things. It is the great ancestor from which the empire sprang. When you think of the origin, you feel this smooth, round surface in your mind. He then points to the two sets of strings, separated by the bridge. Here are the two great tribal peoples of our early history. The Oeso on the left, the Mandinka on the right. Your left hand, your right hand, one for each. He makes you pluck a low, somber note on the left side with your thumb. Suma oro kante of the Oeso. A powerful, dark note for a powerful, dark man. Then he has you pluck a bright, clear note on the right. Dan current human, the first son of the Mandinka king. The high, hopeful sound. It's a revelation. He is teaching you to map history onto the physical architecture of the kora. Each string becomes a person or a major event. The lower strings are the older ancestors. The higher strings are their descendants. The very act of moving your thumb from a low string to a high one is a journey through time. The epic of Sundiata is no longer just a flat recitation. It's a physical path your fingers walk across the strings. You spend months practicing this. Your father will give you a name, and your task is not to say the story, but to simply play the note on the kora that represents them. So G-O-L on K-E-D-J-O-U. He'll say, your index finger will instinctively move to a string in the middle of the right-hand set, a note that is part of the melody of the Kona clan. The physical muscle memory reinforces the mental connection. The kora becomes a tangible index for the library in your head. As your skills grow, the system becomes more intricate. It's not just one note for one person. Daiho melodic phrase, Akteum Bengal, represents a family. When you play that repeating pattern, it's like opening a specific book. Within that book, the flourishes your right hand plays, the berry Mentingal, are like turning the pages, highlighting individual characters and their specific deeds. This is how a Griot can talk for hours, even days, seemingly without pause. They are not searching a chaotic mental void for the next fact. They are following a well-worn musical and spatial path, one that leads them effortlessly from one piece of the story to the next. One day, you stumble upon a strange little detail in this system. Your father teaches you a short, slightly dissonant melodic tag. He tells you it's to be played after the name of a certain lesser-known chief. When you ask why, he explains, because he was known to have a terrible temper. This sour note is a reminder of the soreness in his heart. This is a fascinatedly niche part of the art. The music doesn't just encode facts, but also character, commentary, and context. It's a secret language, A noble in the audience might just hear a pleasant melody, but another Griot listening would understand the subtle praise or the hidden critique buried in the musical structure. Whether this highly organized system was a consciously designed, formal methodology is a point of academic discussion. Some scholars believe that what appears to be a memory palace is really a more organic and intuitive process. They argue that after a lifetime of immersive training, the connections between music and memory become so deeply ingrained that the Griot isn't consciously thinking, "The string means this king." Instead, the music and the story have fused into a single cognitive entity. Is it a deliberate filing system, or is it a form of deeply conditioned muscle memory and intuition? The debate highlights the difficulty of applying modern analytical frameworks to a form of knowledge that is so holistic and embodied. For you, it feels like both. It is a system you are consciously learning to build, but you can already feel moments when it becomes effortless, when your fingers find the notes and the names spring to your lips without you even thinking about it. You are no longer just memorizing. You are weaving. You are taking the thousand tangled threads of history, with the loom of the kora and the shuttle of its melodies. You are weaving them into a single, magnificent tapestry inside your mind. The ocean is still vast, but you are no longer adrift. You have a map, you have a compass, and you are beginning to chart the currents. The weight of it settles on you slowly, not like a sudden blow, but like the slow accumulation of dust over years. It's the weight of being right, always, absolutely. You are 10 years old, and the foundational stories and lineages are now part of you, as familiar as the path to the village well. But with this growing knowledge comes a new, more profound understanding of your responsibility. It begins to hit you one afternoon while listening to a dispute between the elders. They are arguing about a marriage agreement made 2 generations ago. One says the bride's family promised for cows. The other insists it was 5. It's a small matter, but pride is involved, and voices are rising. Finally, they turn to your father, who has been listening quietly. He doesn't speak. He simply takes out his kora. He plays the melody of the 2 families, weaving them together. Then his voice rises, not in judgment, but in simple recitation. He sings of the wedding day, naming the people who were there, describing the feast, and then he sings the line. And the father of the groom, may his memory be a blessing, lead forth 5 cows, each one as fat as a baobab seed. The argument is over. There is no appeal. The music and the memory have spoken. The elder who was wrong doesn't look angry. He looks relieved. The uncertainty is gone. The truth, as held by the Jeli, is restored. Watching this, a cold knot forms in your stomach. What if your father had been wrong? What if, through a slip of memory, he had said for, the history would have been changed? A small change, yes, but a change nonetheless. The trust that holds your entire community together would have been fractured by a single, misremembered word. You start to have nightmares. You dream that you are performing before the great Mansa himself. You are singing the lineage of the Keda clan. And suddenly, you can't remember the name that comes after Sundiata. A vast, echoing silence fills the great hall. The king's face darkens. The strings on your kora snap. One by one, you wake up with your heart pounding, the phantom silence ringing in your ears. This fear becomes your new teacher, a harsh and demanding one. It sharpens your focus. During your lessons, you are no longer just a passive recipient of information. You are a guardian, and you feel the immense pressure not to let anything slip past your watch. Every repetition is a reinforcement of the wall against chaos and forgetting. Your father senses this new anxiety in you. One evening, he sits with you and tells you about the odes of the kora, a kind of unwritten code of the Jeli. Our words have weight, he says. Therefore, we must be careful what we build with them. You do not sing of a family's deepest shame at a wedding feast. You do not invent a noble ancestor for a wealthy man who offers you a big bag of silver. Your allegiance is not to the man who pays you today, but to the truth of the man who lived yesterday. He tells you that the greatest temptation for a Jeli is not to forget, but to alter, to flatter a powerful patron by slightly exaggerating his lineage, to omit an inconvenient fact to keep the peace. This is a rot that can destroy a Jeli from the inside. He says, the story must be true, not because it is polite, but because it is the foundation. If you start chipping away at the foundation to make one room look nicer, the whole house will eventually collapse. This introduces you to a rather quirky and very human part of the Griots world, the historical fact-checkers. While you might be the sole authority in your village, in larger towns or at the royal court, there would be multiple Griots. If one Griot made a mistake or, worse, was suspected of deliberately altering a history for personal gain, another Griot from a rival family could, and often would, publicly correct them. It was a system of peer review, played out in song. These could be incredibly tense and dramatic confrontations. A battle of memories fought with K or as in voices in front of a rapt audience. It was the ultimate academic debate, with your reputation and livelihood on the line. The nature of this truth is, of course, a complex issue that historians continue to explore. Was the Griots' history an objective, factual account in the modern sense, or was it a social truth, a narrative shaped to serve the needs of the community, to reinforce social structures and provide moral guidance? The academic consensus is that it was both. While the core data, the lineages, the key events, were preserved with astonishing fidelity, the telling of the story, the emphasis in the interpretation, was an art form. The Griot was not a tape recorder. They were a historian, an editor, and a performer all in one. The challenge was to be all of those things without ever violating the sacred core of the accepted facts. You begin to see this in your father's own performances. You notice how he might tell the same story of a great battle differently depending on the audience. For a group of young men, he might emphasize the bravery and martial prowess of the warriors. For a council of elders, he might focus on the strategic decisions and the diplomatic aftermath. The facts are the same, but the lens through which they are viewed changes. It is not lying. It is tailoring the lesson. The weight on your shoulders doesn't disappear, but it begins to change its shape. It's no longer just the terrifying weight of potential failure. It is the solid, grounding weight of purpose. You are not just a singer of songs. You are a mason, and the stones you work with are the facts of the past. Your job is to build a structure that is strong, true, and will stand for generations to come. It's a heavy burden, but for the first time, you feel strong enough to carry it. Learning the Epic of Sundiata was like learning the alphabet. No, you must learn to form words, sentences, and entire arguments. The epic is not a static monument in your mind. It is a living tree, and from its trunk grow many branches of knowledge. Your training now shifts from the grand narrative to its countless practical applications. You are moving beyond the role of storyteller and into the more complex territory of the Jeli as a guardian of law and secrets. This lesson begins, as many do, with a real-world problem. The man in your village dies, leaving behind 2 sons and a small herd of cattle. The younger son, who cared for his father in his old age, claims the entire herd. The elder son, who had moved to a nearby town to become a trader, returns and claims the herd is his by birthright. The dispute threatens to tear the family, and by extension the village, apart. You and your father are summoned to the chief's meeting under the great boba. You expect your father to act as a judge, to hear both sides and declare a winner. Instead, he does something far more profound. After listening to both brothers, he takes his kora and begins to play. He doesn't sing of the brothers or their father. He sings a story from the Epic of Sundiata. He recounts a lesser-known episode, where 2 of Sundiata's generals had a similar dispute over the spoils of a battle. In the story, Sundiata listens to them both, and then he makes his judgment, a judgment that has been passed down through the generations of Jeli. A son's duty is to his father. A tree's branch may travel far, but its life comes from the trunk. The fruit belongs to the tree. Your father's song then explains the precedent set by Sundiata. The inheritance is to be divided, but the larger share goes to the son who remained, who cared for the trunk of the family. The melody is not one of conflict, but of ancient wisdom and resolution. When he finishes, there is no argument. The brothers, hearing the judgment not from a man, but from the voice of their own history, nod in acceptance. You have just witnessed the living function of oral law. In your world, there is no great book of statutes. The law is encoded in the epic. In these stories of precedent, to know the law is to know the stories. Your training now involves memorizing hundreds of these specific cases. These narrative-based rulings on everything from property disputes and marriage contracts to water rights and social obligations. It's a legal system where the ultimate authority is not a written code, but a well-remembered story. But your education expands beyond just legal matters. Your father begins to teach you the delicate art of etiquette, which is just another form of social law. Knowing a man's great-grandfather is useless if you insult his cousin by using the wrong greeting. He tells you, you learn the complex systems of honorifics, the specific praise names for each major clan, and, just as importantly, the things one never says. You learn which families have an ancient joking relationship, Kanya, allowing them to publicly tease each other without offense, a social safety valve that dissipates tension. Then your father introduces you to the most hidden side of Jeli, the gathering of secrets. Elixirs are his greatest tools. He whispers to you one evening after returning from a trip to a neighboring chief's court. You are respected, but you are also underestimated. People talk in front of a musician. They forget the musician's memory is his entire life. He explains that a griot, as a traveling artist, is one of the few people who can move freely between different towns, even rival chiefdom. You listen in the marketplace. You listen in the courtyards. You learn of a chief's new alliance, a merchant's sudden wealth, a coming drought in a distant province. This information is a vital resource for your patron, but it is never delivered like a simple report. That would be cruel and dangerous. Instead, your father might sing a new song for your chief, a story about a clever mongoose who sees that the crocodile on the other side of the river is growing fat and lazy. The chief, listening, understands the hidden meaning. His rival is becoming complacent. It's a form of intelligence gathering on strategic advice, all veiled in the beauty of ardent metaphor. This is a strange and wonderful discovery for you. You are training to be a historian, a lawyer, and a spy, all at once. Of course, your old tradition is not the only source of law in the land. Through trade routes to the north, the influence of Islam has brought another powerful system, Sharia law, the written code of the Quran. Historians still debate the complex interplay between traditional Mandinka oral law and the growing influence of Islamic Sharia law in the great empires. They weren't always in conflict. Often, they operated in parallel spheres. A commercial dispute between two Muslim merchants in Timbuktu might be settled in a Sharia court, according to the book, but an inheritance dispute in a village, like the one you witnessed, would be settled by the Jeli, according to the unwritten law of the ancestors. Some rulers embraced Islam and its legal system, while others held fast to the traditional ways. Most, in practice, navigated a hybrid system, applying whichever law seemed most appropriate to the situation. You are beginning to see that your role is far more layered than you ever imagined. It's not just about what you know. It's about how and when you deploy the knowledge. You are learning to read not just your internal library of stories, but the living book of people in power that surrounds you every day. Every song has a purpose. Every story has a function. And silence, sometimes, is the most powerful statement of all. Your world, up until now, has been shaped by the voices of men. Your father, your uncle, the village chief. These are the figures of authority and knowledge you have studied. But one day, a visitor arrives in your village who changes the texture of the air, the very sound of history itself. She is your father's cousin, a woman named Fatu, and she is a Jeli, a female Griot. Fatu is not like the other women in your village. She carries herself with an unshakable confidence. Her eyes sharp and knowing. She doesn't carry a kora, Her instrument is her voice, and a small, percussive shaker called a shike, made from a dried gourd woven with a net of beads. When she speaks, people lean in to listen, not just out of respect, but out of sheer captivation. That evening, the village gathers. Your father, as his custom, begins to play, but then he does something you've never seen before. After singing the opening lineage, he falls silent, his hands still on the kora, providing a soft, rhythmic backing. He nods to Fotu, and she begins to sing. Her voice is different from your father's. It is higher, more piercing, yet it has a strength that seems to come from the very earth. She does not sing of the great battles of Sundiata. Instead, she sings of the women. She sings of Soji Oelan, Sundiata's mother, but she tells a part of the story you've never heard in such detail. The story of her fierce, unwavering belief in her son, of the magical powers she used to protect him during their exile. She sings of Sundiata's grandmother, and her grandmother before her, weaving a matrilineal thread back through history that is as strong and vital as the patrilineal one you have so painstakingly memorized. The men in the audience listen with respect, but it's the women you watch. They are mesmerized. They lean forward, their faces illuminated by the firelight, nodding, sometimes murmuring in agreement. Fetish songs are about childbirth, about marriage alliances, about the private counsel women gave to their powerful husbands and sons. She sings of the founding of villages, not by great warriors, but by the first woman to cultivate a patch of land. This is a history that happens not on the battlefield, but in the heart of the home and the community. It is a history that is no less important, just quieter. Later, you ask your father, is her history different from ours? He shakes his head. It is not different. It is a different part of the whole. A story has many rooms. The Jeli opens some doors, and the Jeli must so open others. Without both, the house is not complete. This is your introduction to the powerful and distinct role of female Griots. The Jeli are not just female versions of their male counterparts. They are masters of specific genres and bodies of knowledge. While male Griots Jeli often focused on the grand political epics and genealogies tied to warfare and royal succession, the women were the keepers of other essential histories. They were specialists in kinship, family lore, and the stories of the clans from a domestic and social perspective. Their praise songs were often considered even more powerful and emotionally resonant than the men's. To be praised by a Jeli was a sign of true social standing. One of the most interesting and somewhat peculiar roles of the Jeli was as a guardian of moral character. They were often the ones who would be called upon to sing at weddings, and their songs would contain subtle, or not so subtle, advice to the new bride and groom, reminding them of the virtues and failings of their ancestors as a guide for their own behavior. A praise song from a Jeli could elevate a woman's status in her new family, while a pointed silence or a song about a famously difficult ancestor could serve as a powerful warning. The precise historical status and influence of Jeli are still a subject of rich academic study, as their contributions were often less documented in the external, male-centric Arab accounts that historians rely on. Did they have their own formal apprenticeships, just like the men? Did they travel as widely, or was their influence more localized? Oral traditions themselves suggest that some Jeli became incredibly powerful figures, acting as trusted advisors to queens and female chiefs, wielding significant political and social influence behind the scenes. Some scholars argue that their role became even more crucial as Islam spread, as the formal, public spaces became more male-dominated, leaving the preservation of certain pre-Islamic, female-centric traditions in the hands of the Jeli. Spending time with Fatu is like discovering a whole new wing of the library you've been building in your head. She teaches you songs you've never heard, lullabies that contain complex genealogies, and rhythms on the shikar that lock in with the K or as melody in surprising ways. She teaches you that a story's power isn't just in its facts, but in its perspective. You learn that while a man's honor might be tied to his bravery in battle, A woman's might be tied to her wisdom in forging an alliance through marriage. Both are acts of nation building. Both are essential parts of the epic. Fata's visit is short, but her impact on you is permanent. She has added depth and color to your understanding of history. It is not just a single, deep voice telling one story. It is a chorus of voices, male and female, high and low, singing in harmony. The song of your people is far richer and more complex than you ever knew. You realize that to be a true Jeli, you must learn to listen to all the voices in the choir. With your understanding of history deepened by Fata's visit, you begin to grasp that a story is not just a sequence of events, but a tapestry of perspectives. You are ready for a more subtle lesson, one that moves beyond the words and into the very soul of the music. Your father sees this readiness in you. He knows you have built the house of your memory. Now it's time to learn how to paint the rooms in different colors. One afternoon, he calls you into the quiet of the kora hut. He doesn't ask you to recite a lineage or tell a story. He simply holds his kora and plays a bright, cheerful melody. It's a familiar tune, one often used to praise a generous G4 to celebrate a harvest. The notes dance in the air, full of light and energy. Then he stops. Listen closely, he says. He lays the kora down and begins to work on the long neck. You watch, fascinated, as he carefully loosens and slides some of the braided leather rings, the console, that hold the strings in place. He pushes one up a fraction, another down. He plucks the strings, listening with intense concentration, making tiny adjustments until a new set of relationships between the notes is established. He has not changed the strings. He has changed the key, or his mind. He picks the instrument back up, settles it in his lap, and places his fingers in the exact same position as before. He plays the very same pattern of notes, but the music that emerges is utterly transformed. The melody is no longer cheerful. It is mournful, contemplative, and deeply profound. The same physical movements now produce a sound that speaks of ancient sorrows and the weight of time. You stare at him, speechless. It's like watching a man say the same word twice, and having it mean joy the first time and grief the second. You see, your father says, a small smile on his face. The kora has more than one voice. We do not just play music. We choose the language the music will speak. This is the art of tuning. He explains that there are several fundamental tunings, or modes, for the kora. The first one he played, the bright and major sounding one, is called syllabe. This is our everyday voice. He explains. It is the voice of light, of praise, of community. You play in syllabe for weddings, for naming ceremonies, for welcoming a guest. He then gestures to the kora in its new, somber tuning. This is saute, he says. This is a deep and serious voice. You use it for the great histories, for the epic of Sundiata, for stories of war and destiny. To speak of the Lion King in the voice of syllabe would be disrespectful. It would be like telling a joke at a funeral. He explains there are others, too, like Hardino, which has a different feel, sometimes used for stories of longing or reflection. This is a monumental step in your education. You are learning the grammar of emotion. The choice of tuning is the first and most important decision a Jeli makes before a performance. It sets the entire emotional tone. It tells the audience, before a single word is sung, what kind of journey they are about to embark on. You begin to practice returning your own small kora. It's a painstaking process. Your ear is not as fine as your father's. You struggle to hear the subtle intervals, the precise relationship between the strings that defines a mode. But slowly, you learn the feeling of saute under your fingers, how it seems to make the very wood of the instrument vibrate with a more serious, ancient energy. This practice reveals a fascinating, quirky detail of the Jeli world. Just as people in different regions speak with different accents, Griots from different areas often have their own subtle variations on the primary tunings. A Jeli from the Gambia might play a saute that is almost imperceptibly different from the saute of a Jeli from Mali. These regional dialects are a mark of a Griot's origin. a sonic signature that another master Jel I could recognize instantly. It's a layer of identity, woven directly into the fabric of the music. This deep dive into musical theory raises a question in your mind. A question that ethnomusicologists still puzzle over. Which came first, the story or the mode? Did an ancient Jeli, trying to capture the profound tragedy and triumph of Sundiata's story, invent the sword tuning as the perfect vehicle for its telling? Or did the existence of these different musical moods on the instrument itself shape the way the epics were composed and performed, encouraging the development of stories that fit the available emotional palettes? It's a classic chicken and egg problem. Is the music a response to the narrative, or is the narrative shaped by the possibilities of the music? There is no clear answer, only a deep, symbiotic relationship that has evolved over centuries. Your own playing is transformed. You are no longer just a technician, accurately reproducing notes and words. You are an interpreter. When you practice the story of Sundiata's crippled childhood, you do it in saute, and the sorrowful notes add a layer of pathos that words alone cannot convey. When you practice a praise song for your father, you use syllabi, and the bright, cascading notes sing to a genuine joy to your words. You are learning to speak the Krora's true language. It is a language of emotion, of atmosphere, of deep cultural memory. The instrument is no longer just your memory's companion. It is a co-narrator. It has its own voice in the telling of a tale, a voice that can whisper of sorrow, sing of joy, or thunder with the weight of history. You are 13 years old. The calyces on your fingers are thick and hard. Your voice, once a child's pipe, is deepening into the tones of a young man. You can recite the core lineages. You know the major events of the epic, and you can switch your Krora's tuning from syllabi to saute with a growing confidence. You have spent years absorbing knowledge like a dry sponge. Now, it is time to be squeezed. The announcement is made quietly, without fanfare. In 1 week's time, the elders of your extended Griot clan, including your formidable uncle and the revered Fatu, will be gathering. It is not a feast or a celebration. It is an examination. It will be your first true public test. You will be expected to stand before the most discerning audience imaginable, your own family of Master Griots, and perform. A week has never felt so short. The familiar stories in your head suddenly seem fragile. The kora strings slippery and untrustworthy. Fear, cold and sharp, becomes your constant companion. It's not the fear of a scolding. It's the fear of a deeper failure. To fail here is not just a personal embarrassment. It would bring shame to your father, your direct teacher. It would suggest that a link in the great chain of your family's memory is weak. Your father does not drill you harder. Instead, he becomes calmer. He senses your panic. One evening, he takes you not to the kora hut, but for a walk to the edge of the village as the sun sets, bleeding orange and purple across the vast sky. I am afraid, you admit, the words feeling small in the open air. Good, he replies, not looking at you. Fear means you understand the weight of what you carry. Jeli without fear is like a blacksmith who does not respect the fire. He will get burned. He stops and turns to you. But you cannot let the fear carry you. You must carry the fear. It is a part of the performance, not the master of it. When you stand before them, you will not be alone. Every ancestor whose name you speak will be standing with you. The day arrives. The air in your family compound is thick with a formal tension. Your uncle sits on a low stool, his face impassive, a living statue of tradition. Fatu is there, her eyes watching you with an intensity that seems to see right through your skin. Other cousins undead Griots are gathered, their faces familiar but unsmiling. This is not a time for warmth. It is a time for assessment. Your father nods to you. It is time. You walk to the center of the gathering, your small kora clutched in your sweaty hands. You sit on the mat that has been placed for you. The silence is absolute. It is not an empty silence. It is a silence full of expectation, full of the collective knowledge of a dozen master historians, all focused on you. You can hear the blood pounding in your ears. You take a deep breath, trying to remember your father's words. You are not alone. You look at your kora, at the physical map of your history. You place your fingers on the strings. Your hands are trembling, but you begin to play. You have chosen saute tuning, the mode of history. You play the opening theme, a simple K-U-M-Ben go for the Konati clan. The notes come out a little shaky, but they are clear. Then, you open your mouth to sing. You begin with the lineage, the names you learned as a small child, the first stones you laid in your memory palace. The names come, one after another, a steady chain of sound. As you speak them, something shifts. The fear does not vanish, but it recedes, replaced by the rhythm of the story. The faces of the elders blur. The compound disappears. You are walking the path in your mind, the one you have walked 1,000 times with your father. Your uncle interrupts, his voice sharp like a striking snake. The second wife of N. Armag Han Kola T. Name her. It's a test. A deviation from the main path. Your flow is broken. Panic flashes in your chest. The second wife. Not Sir Geo Ilan. The first. You pause. The silence stretches. You can feel a dozen pairs of eyes on you. You close your own, picturing the family tree in your mind, searching the branch, and then you find it. A smaller branch you've reviewed but rarely focused on. Her name was Fatumata. You say, your voice clear. From her came Dinkaran human, who ruled as king before his brother, Sundiata, returned from exile. You look at your uncle. His face betrays nothing, but he gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod. You can continue. You perform for what feels like an eternity. You tell the story of Sundiata's birth, of his crippled childhood. You sing of the bending of the iron rod. Batu stopped you then, her voice softer than your uncle's, but no less demanding. Sing of So Golan's heart in that moment. She says, what was her song? This is a different kind of test, not of fact, but of empathy, of interpretation. You close your eyes again, recalling the way Fata herself sang of the women, the quiet histories. You modulate your voice, trying to channel not just the story, but the emotion, the fierce pride and profound relief of a mother seeing her son claim his destiny. When you finish, there's another long silence. It is not the silence of expectation anymore. It is the silence of consideration. You have done all you can. You wait for the verdict. Finally, your uncle speaks. The tree is strong, he says, not to you, but to your father. The branch will grow straight. It is the highest praise you could imagine. A wave of relief so powerful it almost makes you dizzy washes over you. You look at your father, and for the first time in this long day, you see him smile. It is a smile of immense, unburdened pride. This trial, this public examination by a council of masters, is a crucial part of the Griot tradition. It is a quality control mechanism. It's a bit like a modern-day PhD defense, where the candidate must prove their mastery of the subject to a panel of experts. The stakes, however, are arguably higher, as your subject is the very identity of your people. Historians still discuss the exact nature of these trials. Were they standardized? How often did they occur? The details are lost to us, hidden in the privacy of the Griot families. But their existence is a testament to the rigorous standards and the immense seriousness with which this oral tradition was maintained. You have passed. You are not a master. Not yet. But you have proven that you are a true Jeli in the making. You have faced the keepers of the tradition and shown them that their legacy is safe in your hands. You have carried the weight, and you have not buckled. The world, which for so long has been the size of your village, is about to explode outwards. Your successful examination before the elders has earned you a new privilege. You are deemed ready to leave the nest, at least for a while. Your father's primary patron, a wealthy salt merchant who trades across the empire, has requested that a Jeli accompany his next caravan. Normally, your father would go, but this time, he has decided that he will send you in his place, under the watchful eye of his most trusted apprentice, a young man named Bakori. It is your first journey away from home. The prospect is both thrilling and terrifying. You will be leaving the familiar world of family compounds and baobab trees for the vast, open spaces of the Sahel and the bustling arteries of the Mali Empire. The caravan assembles just after dawn, a chaotic and exciting spectacle. Dozens of camels, grumpy and crony, are being loaded with massive slabs of salt, mined from the great salt pans in the north. The salt is as valuable as gold, a precious commodity that will be traded for grain, cloth, and other goods in the southern forests. The air is a cacophony of sounds. The braying of donkeys, the shouting of the caravan drivers, the clanking of pots and pans. You feel very small and very young. Bakari, a man of 20 with a kind smile and an old soul, finds you. Stick with me, he says, and keep your kora dry. The journey begins. You walk. 4 days, you walk. The landscape changes from the sparse woodland of your home to a vast, scrubby plain that stretches to a horizon that seems impossibly far away. The sun is a relentless hammer. The world is reduced to the rhythmic plodding of your own feet, the swaying of the camels, and the endless, shimmering heat. This is the reality of the Griot's life that stories often leave out. It was not all performing in royal courts. Many Griots were itinerant, traveling with merchants, moving between villages, their lives governed by the seasons and the great trade routes that crisscrossed West Africa. These routes were the empire's circulatory system, and the Griots were like red blood cells, carrying information and culture from one part of the body to another. In the evenings, the caravan makes camp. A fire is built, and the men gather around, weary from the day's long march. And this is where your work begins. Bakari will start, playing his kora, his music a soothing balm for tired bodies and minds. He sings familiar songs, stories of clever animals or funny tales of village life. Then, he will nod to you, tell them where we are, he'll whisper, and you, using the knowledge your father gave you, will begin to sing not a great epic, but a local history. You will sing of the people who live in this region, naming their founding ancestor. You'll tell a short story about a famous chief who once ruled this land. The caravan drivers, many of whom are not from your men people, listen with a mixture of curiosity and respect. You are not just entertaining them. You are giving the very ground beneath their feet a story and a name. You are transforming an anonymous patch of dirt into a place with a past. This is one of the Griot's most vital functions, as a cultural translator and a unifier. The Mali Empire was not a homogeneous state. It was a vast, multi-ethnic, multilingual collection of peoples. A caravan like yours might have man drivers, Fulani herdsmen, and Songhai traders. How do you forge a common identity among such a diverse group? The Griot was a key part of the answer, by knowing and respecting the local histories of all the various peoples within the empire. The Jeli could create a sense of shared space and mutual understanding. One night, you encounter a strange and fascinating proof of this. The caravan camps near a small Fulani village. The Fulani are a semi-nomadic people, famous for their cattle herds. After you and Bakari perform, one of the old Fulani herdsmen approaches. He doesn't speak your language well, but he points to Bakari's kora, then makes a motion of playing a different instrument, a one-stringed fiddle. He then sings a short, haunting melody. Bakari listens intently, then nods. He plays a few notes on his kora, and the old man's face breaks into a wide, toothless grin. Bakari explains to you later. He was singing a praise song for a great Fulani hero. I know that song. Our melodies are different. Our instruments are different. But the story, the hero, has deeds. We both know it. Our histories are intertwined. Whether this deep cross-cultural knowledge was common to all Griots is a matter of some debate. Some were likely highly specialized in the history of their own lineage and people. But a well-traveled Jeli, particularly one in the service of a great king or merchant, would almost certainly have had to be a student of comparative history, able to navigate the complex web of relationships between the empire's many ethnic groups. They were, in a sense, the first ethnograpers. The journey is long and arduous, but your mind is expanding with every step. You are seeing the theories your father taught you come to life. You see how a song can build a bridge between strangers. You see how a story can make an alien landscape feel like home. You are no longer just the keeper of your village's memory. You are a weaver, and you are beginning to see the thousands of threads, Mande, Fulani, Songhai, and more that make up the vast, intricate fabric of the empire. You are learning that history is not just a path you walk in your mind. It is a road you travel with your own 2 feet. After weeks of travel, the caravan arrives at its destination, the court of your father's patron, the salt merchant. But this is no simple merchant. He is a man of immense wealth and influence, a key figure in the regional capital. And his compound is a dizzying world of its own. It's a sprawling complex of high-walled mud brick buildings, bustling with servants, traders, and stern-faced guards. For the first time, you are breathing the air of real power and wealth. Your role here is different. You are not just an evening entertainer for weary travelers. You are a symbol of your patron's status. A wealthy and important man doesn't just have fine clothes and a large house. He has a personal Jeli. You are living art, a walking testament to his connection to the noble traditions of the past. The merchant, a large man named Ismail, greets you warmly. He knew you as a small child, and he looks you over with an appraising eye. You have your father's eyes, he says, but do you have his memory? We shall see. That evening, Ismail holds a feast for his associates, other merchants, local officials, and the captains of his caravans. You and Bakari are given a place of honor. Near him, when the time comes, he gestures for you to perform. Bakari begins, playing a classic praise song for the merchant's clan. But then he looks to you. It is your turn. Your task is specific and daunting. Ismail wants you to sing his lineage, but not just the names. He wants you to sing of his family's accomplishments, specifically their history in the salt trade. He wants to remind his guests, through the unimpeachable voice of a Jeli, that his family has been a pillar of the community for generations. His legitimacy and business reputation are. For this evening, in your hands, your heart pounds, but this is what you have trained for. You begin. You sing of Ismail's grandfather, who first established the trade route south. You sing of a great drought, when his father distributed salt to the people at a loss, cementing the family's reputation for generosity. You even small, specific details you learned from your father. The name of a loyal camel, the story of a clever negotiation. The details make the history feel real, tangible. As you sing, you watch Ismail. He is not just listening. He is absorbing the praise. His posture straightens. He nods along. Your words are a mirror. And in them, he is seeing the most noble version of himself and his family. Your song is reinforcing his identity, both to himself and to his peers. This is the core of the relationship between a Griot and their patron. It's a symbiotic dance. The patron provides the Jeli with sustenance, protection, and a platform. In return, the Jeli provides the patron with the one thing money cannot buy: a noble and resonant history. The Jeli legitimizes the patron's power, grounding their present-day status in the deep soil of the past. For a king, this was essential for his right to rule. For a merchant like Ismail, it's crucial for his social standing and his credit. After your performance, Ismail is pleased. He places a small bag of silver coins in your hand, more money than you have ever held in your life. You have his memory after all, he says, with a satisfied smile. But you also witness the more complex, and sometimes darker, side of this relationship. A few days later, a less skilled, traveling musician, not a true Jeli, tries to perform for Ismail, singing a clumsy and generic praise song. Ismail dismisses him with a flick of his wrist. The man's flattery was hollow because it lacked the authority of true historical knowledge. This dynamic leads to a quirky and specific subgenre of Griot performance, the battle for patronage. If a powerful lord had a personal Jeli, a visiting Jeli might challenge the incumbent to a public contest of skill and knowledge. They would trade verses, each trying to outdo the other in the depth of their knowledge and the beauty of their poetry, with the patron as the ultimate judge. The winner could win great rewards, or even displace the current court Jeli. It was a high-stakes musical duel. Historians have long debated the precise nature of this patron-griot relationship. Was the griot simply a mouthpiece for the patron, a propagandist singing whatever the person paying them wanted to hear? Or did the griot retain a degree of independence, their authority rooted in the tradition itself, giving them the ability to criticize or caution a patron? The answer is likely both. A Jeli who outrageously flattered a clearly undeserving man would lose their credibility. But a Jeli who constantly criticized their patron would soon find themselves without food or shelter. It was a constant, delicate negotiation. The Jeli had to serve their patron's needs while remaining true to the core tenets of their ancestral tradition. You are living this negotiation every day. You are an employee, but you are also a priest of history. You are a teenager in a strange city, but you are also the carrier of a power that can make the wealthiest merchant sit up and listen. You learn to praise a Smain for his real virtues, his shrewdness, his family loyalty, without inventing false ones. You learn to embed subtle advice in your stories, praising a historical figure for their wisdom and forgiving a debt, hoping the Smain takes the hint. You are learning that the Jeli's art is not just practiced in the quiet of a hut or the center of a village square. It is practiced in the corridors of power, where history is not just a story of the past, but a tool that shapes the present, and a currency more precious than salt or gold. In the bustling court of the merchantess Main, you learn a new and subtle form of your art, one that requires more than just a good memory. It requires a keen understanding of human nature. You learn the art of the praise song, the fosa, and you discover it is a far more complex and politically charged instrument than you ever imagined. Praise singing is not simple flattery. That is the work of amateurs. True fosa is a sophisticated craft. It is the art of seeing the best in a person and connecting that virtue to the grand narrative of their ancestry, making their personal goodness feel like the fulfillment of a historical destiny. Bakari becomes your mentor in this delicate craft. Anyone can say a man is generous. He tells you as you practice in the small room you've been given. But a Jeli must show it. You must find the seed of his generosity in his great-grandfather Astori and show how it has bloomed in him. He makes you practice on him. Your first attempts are clumsy. You praise Bakari for his skill on the kora. No, he stops you. That is like saying the sky is blue. It is a fact. Now to praise song. Who taught me? My uncle. What was he known for? His patience. So, praise the patience in my playing. Praise the echo of my teacher in my hands. Connect me to the stream of my history. It's a revelation. A priest's song is not a snapshot. It's a portrait with a deep background, linking the subject to their lineage, their community, and the values of the culture. It is a way of saying, you are not just a great man. You are a great man band. You get your chance to try this for real a few weeks later. Asmain is negotiating a major deal with a visiting trader from the south, a man from a different ethnic group with his own distinct traditions. The negotiations are tense. That evening, Asmain hosts a dinner, and the mood is stiffened for. He calls on you to perform. He whispers to you, praise him, make him feel welcome. This is a test of the highest order. You don't know this man's lineage. Not in the detail you know your own people's. To invent a history would be a grave insult. You feel a surge of panic. Bakari catches your eye and gives a slight, encouraging nod. You have to rely on what you can see and what you have learned about the art of praise itself. You begin not with history, but with respect. You play a gentle, welcoming melody, then you begin to sing. You praise the dust on his sandals, for it is the sign of a long, difficult journey undertaken for the sake of honorable commerce. You praise the wisdom in his eyes, which have seen many markets and weighed the value of many goods. You praise his clan name, which you had the foresight to ask a servant about earlier. connecting it not to a specific ancestor you don't know, but to the general virtues for which his people are famous. Their skill in farming, their strong community bonds. You are building a bridge of respect, using the universal language of dignity. The visiting trader, at first guarded, begins to relax. A small smile touches his lips. He feels seen and honored, not for who you are pretending he is, but for who he truly is. By the end of the song, the atmosphere in the room has changed. The tension has eased. You have not closed the deal for a smain, but you have opened the door for a conversation between equals. This is the political power of the praise song, but it is a double-edged sword. You also learn that praise can be a weapon. Jeli can dumb a man with faint praise, or by praising him for a virtue everyone knows he lacks, a form of exquisite irony that would be humiliating. Even more powerfully, with Jeli, I can withdraw praise. To have your Jeli fall silent when your name is mentioned is a profound social rebuke. One of the strangest and most fascinating aspects of this tradition is what some scholars call praise scolding. They secure in their traditional authority, could embed sharp criticism within a praise song. They might sing to a greedy chief, "Oh, you are as generous as your grandfather, he who gave away his last grain of rice. It has been so long since we have seen such generosity. We have almost forgotten what it looks like." On the surface, it is praise, but the hidden meaning is a sharpened public scolding. It's an incredibly high-risk, high-reward maneuver that only the most respected and skillful Jeli would dare attempt. The very existence of such a powerful and nuanced art form has sparked debate among historians. How much of the praise singing tradition was a genuine expression of social values, and how much was a form of social control, a way for elites to have their status constantly reinforced and broadcast. Some Marxist interpretations, for instance, have viewed griots as instruments of the ruling class. Their praise songs a kind of cultural anesthetic to keep the social hierarchy stable. However, most modern scholars see a more complex reality. The Jeli was not just a mouthpiece. They were an active participant in a negotiation of power and reputation, able to use praise, and its absence, to mediate, to critique, and to shape the behavior of the powerful. You are learning this power firsthand. You are learning to watch, to listen, and to find the truth in a person that will make your song resonate. You are discovering that the simple act of praising someone is one of the most complex social transactions in your world. It is a dance of diplomacy, a political negotiation, and a profound declaration of identity, all disguised as a beautiful song. Your journey with the salt caravan eventually takes you north, following the Niger River as it bends towards the Sahara. The landscape grows drier, the sun more intense, and then one day, rising from the dusty plains like a mirage, you see it, Timbuktu. The city is unlike anything you have ever imagined. It's not just a large village. It's a metropolis, a legendary center of commerce and scholarship. Its name whispered with awe even in your small, distant home. The streets are a vibrant, chaotic symphony of 100 different cultures. Tuan nomads in flowing blue robes lead their camels, their eyes ancient and inscrutable. Bambara merchants shout prices over piles of spices. And everywhere, there are scholars, men in clean, white robes, their faces serene and serious, walking to and from the city's great mosques and universities. But it is not the people who strike you the most. It is the books. In the merchant house nest reading compound, you see them for the first time. Not just one or two, but rooms full of them. Men sit in shaded courtyards, not talking, but staring silently at bound pages of paper covered in intricate, flowing black script. They are reading. Bukhari takes you to the Sanko University, a sprawling complex of buildings around a great mosque. It is not a university in the sense of a single building, but a community of scholars. You peer into a courtyard where a famous professor sits on a rug. His students gathered around him. He is not singing an ep. He is reading from a heavy, desert brown book, his finger tracing the Arabic words. He is teaching Islamic law, astronomy, philosophy, all from the written word. A new and unsettling feeling takes root in you. It is a feeling of rivalry. Everything you are, everything you have trained to be, is based on the power and sanctity of the spoken word, of living memory. Here, in this great city, is a different kind of power, the power of ink on paper. You are a living library. This city is full of paper ones. One evening, a debate takes place in our Mandinka courtyard. A learned Islamic scholar, a Qadi, is discussing a point of law with a Smain. The scholar makes his argument by quoting a passage from a famous legal text, even sending a servant to fetch the book to prove his point. Asmain then turns to you and Bakari. "And what does the tradition of the ancestors say?" he asks. Bakari steps forward. He does not have a book to open. He opens his memory. He begins to sing the story of a ruling made by one of Sundiata's generals that touches on a similar issue. His performance is powerful, his story compelling. The two forms of knowledge face each other in the torchlight. The fixed, silent authority of the written word versus the fluid, breathing authority of the oral tradition. The scholar's book has perfect, unchanging accuracy, but Bakari's story has emotion. It has performance. It has the weight of a living human voice connecting the present moment directly to the past. They are not just two different sources of information. They are two entirely different ways of knowing the world. This encounter between oral and literate cultures in cities like Timbuktu is a fascinating moment in history. It wasn't a simple case of one replacing the other. For centuries, they coexisted, sometimes in tension, sometimes in harmony. A king might consult his griot for a matter of ancestral custom and his Islamic scholar for a matter of commercial law. The two traditions often serve different needs. A strange and little-known consequence of this interaction was how some griots began to incorporate elements of the literate world into their own tradition, almost as a form of competition. Some griots, especially those associated with highly Islamicized courts, would adopt Arabic titles or sprinkle their epics with references to Islamic figures, creating a hybrid history that appealed to their patrons. It was a way of saying, "Our tradition is just as learned and profound as yours." The debate about which system was better is, of course, a modern projection, but historical sources do give us hints of the rivalry. Islamic scholars sometimes wrote dismissively of the griots as mere entertainers or flatterers, and while griots left no written rebuttals, their epics are filled with the fierce pride in the power of the spoken word. The very core of the Jel art is an implicit argument that history is not a dead thing to be trapped in a book, but a living force that must be performed and experienced to be truly understood. As you spend more time in Timbuktu, you feel the profound difference in your own bones. You walk through the markets, a silent observer, absorbing everything, the smells, the sounds, the faces. Your memory is your notebook. Later, you will turn those observations into a song, a story. The scholars you see, however, retreat from the chaos of the world to the silence of their libraries to find their truth. Their knowledge is abstract, universal. Yours is grounded, specific, tied to people and to place. You don't feel inferior. You feel different, like a river fish that suddenly finds itself in the great, salty ocean. The water is vast and full of new wonders, but it's not the water you were born to breathe. You hold your kora a little tighter. It feels less like an instrument and more like an anchor, connecting you to your own unique way of knowing. A tradition that relies not on the eye that reads, but on the ear that listens and the heart that remembers. The silent battle between memory and ink is being waged all around you, and you are a soldier on the front lines. Your time in Timbuktu, with its silent libraries and scholarly debates, taught you about the power of different kinds of knowledge. Now, on the journey back south, you will learn how to use your own specific power not just to remember the past, but to change the future. You are about to discover the griot's role as a diplomat. The caravan joins with another, larger group for security on the return leg of the journey. This creates a small, temporary city on the move. And with so many different people packed together, Tensions inevitably arise. A dispute breaks out between two of the caravan leaders. One, a proud Mande warrior who commands a contingent of guards, chooses the other, a wealthy Twa merchant, of taking more than his fair share of water from a well. It's a serious accusation in the parched landscape of the Sahel. Voices are raised. Swords are loosened in their scabbards. The fragile alliance of the caravan is about to shatter over a few skins of water, a conflict that could leave them all vulnerable to bandits. Asmain, your patron, tries to intervene, but both men are too proud to back down. He looks worried. A fight here would be disastrous for his business and for every honest safety. He turns to Bakari, his expression a clear command. Fix this. You expect Bakari to deliver a judgment, to invoke a law from the epic as you've seen your father do. But he does something far more subtle and brilliant. He takes out his kora, and you take out yours. He doesn't address the two angry men directly. Instead, he speaks to the entire assembled caravan, his voice calm and clear over the tense silence. Let us rest our tempers for a moment, he says, and remember who we are and the journeys we have shared. He begins to play, but he doesn't play in song, nor does he attempt it while melody he doesn't truly know. He plays a rhythm that is ancient and universal, the rhythm of walking. Then he begins to sing. He sings of the great salt trade that binds the desert to the forest. He sings of the courage of all travelers, of the shared dangers of the road, of the sun that beats down on everyone equally, regardless of their clan or their language. He is not taking sides. He is reminding them of their common ground. Then he does something amazing. He starts to weave genealogies together. He sings of the Mande warriors clan, praising a great ancestor known for his wisdom in battle. Then, in the very next verse, he sings of the Twa merchant's lineage, which he must have learned at some point in his travels, praising a famous chieftain known for his hospitality to strangers. He follows this with a story, a short, almost forgotten tale from the early days of the Mali Empire, of how a man warrior and a Twa chief, once rivals, swore an oath of brotherhood to defeat a common enemy. He is not telling them what to do. He is showing them who they are. He is holding up a mirror that reflects not their current anger, but their deepest, shared history. He is reminding them that their ancestors were allies, not enemies. The anger begins to drain from the faces of the two men. The warrior slowly takes his hand off the hilt of his sword. The merchant, his face still stern, gives a curt nod. The crisis has passed. Bakari's song has not solved the water dispute, but it has cooled the heat of pride enough for a rational solution to be found. He has used shared history as a tool of de-escalation. This role as a mediator was one of the most important and least understood functions of the Griot. In a society where family honor and personal pride were paramount, a direct apology or backing down from a challenge could be seen as a sign of weakness. The Griot provided a crucial social lubricant by reframing a conflict in the context of a shared, noble history. The Jeli created a space where opponents could find a resolution without losing face. It was a form of shuttle diplomacy conducted through song. This diplomatic function extended to the highest levels of power. Kings and chiefs would use their griots as emissaries, sending them to rival courts to deliver messages or to negotiate treaties. A griot was the perfect diplomat. Their traditional status as a protected, respected artisan often granted them safe passage through hostile territory. More importantly, they carried with them the authority of history. They could remind a rival king of ancient oaths of friendship or marriage alliances between their families, making a plea for peace not a request, but a call to honor one's ancestral promises. The actual historical evidence for griots as formal ambassadors is sometimes debated. While the epics themselves are full of such stories, some historians question whether this was a regular, official role or a more informal one that grew out of their travels. Was there a recognized diplomatic immunity for griots, or was their safety more dependent on the personal power of their patron and their own skill in navigating dangerous political waters? The consensus leans towards a more semi-formal role, not an official ambassador in the modern sense. but a powerful and often used channel of communication whose effectiveness was rooted in their unique cultural authority. You have just witnessed the power of this authority in its purest form. You helped Bakari provide the musical foundation for his diplomatic intervention. You saw how the right story, told at the right time, can be more powerful than a sword. It's a profound lesson. History is not just a record of past conflicts. In the hands of a skilled Jeli, it is a blueprint for future peace. As you mature, and your mental library grows ever larger, a new and unsettling question begins to surface in your mind. It was sparked by your father's answer long ago about the different kind of true in the Sundiata epic, and it has been nagging at you ever since. You sit with Bakari by the fire one night. The rest of the caravan is asleep, and you finally ask him, "Bakari," you say, your voice low, "did he really have a Beelafan, a xylophone, with magical powers? Did Sundiata really counter him with his own magic?" Bakari looks into the flickering flames for a long moment before answering. "Some Jeli, I will tell you yes. They will say it is the literal truth, and to question it is to question the ancestors. They will tell you of the magical Beelafan that played by itself and the owls that brought Suma Oro messages." He pauses, then picks up a small stick and draws a circle in the dust. "Other Jeli will tell you that the story is a key. Then the magic is the law. The magic of Suma Oro was his oppressive power, his tyranny that seemed supernatural to those he crushed. The magic of Sundiata was his destiny, his charisma, his ability to inspire people, which was a force more powerful than any sorcery." He looks at you, his eyes serious. "And which is the truer story? The one with the magic owls, or the one about the nature of power? This is the great, central enigma of your craft. You are a guardian of history, sworn to accuracy, but what is the nature of the history you are guarding? Is it a literal, factual record, or is it a collection of profound metaphors wrapped in the costume of a story? The answer, you are beginning to realize, is not simple. Your training has been relentlessly focused on verbatim repetition. You were taught that to change a word is to corrupt the past. And yet, you have also been taught that the story's deepest truth lies in its moral, not its literal details. You are holding to seemingly contradictory ideas in your head at once. The sanctity of the text, and the metaphorical nature of its content. This very struggle is what makes the oral traditions of the Griots so fascinating, and so difficult for modern, text-based historians to categorize. The Western tradition tends to draw a sharp line between history, what verifiably happened, and mythology, what people believe. But in your world, that line is blurred, or perhaps it doesn't exist in the same way. The epic of Sundiata is both at once. It is history that has been made mythic, and myth that has been made historical. Take the figure of Suma Oro Conte. Historical evidence suggests he was a real ruler of the Oeso kingdom who was indeed defeated by Sundiata. But was he a sorcerer? The epic portrays him as such, listing the magical fetishes that gave him his power. A literal interpretation sees a battle between a hero and a wizard. A metaphorical interpretation sees a clash between two models of kingship. Suma Oro's power is illegitimate, derived from dark, personal magic and terror. Sundiata's power is legitimate, granted by destiny and affirmed by the collective will of the people. The story of the magic is a way of teaching a profound political lesson about the foundations of just rule. This blend of fact and allegory is a constant source of debate among academics who study the epics. They painstakingly compare different versions of the story, recorded from different griots at different times, to see what core facts remain consistent and what details change with the telling. It's a bit like historical forensics. For example, the genealogies in the major battle sequences tend to be remarkably stable across different versions. The supernatural elements, however, can vary widely. One JL might emphasize Suma Oro's magical invulnerability, while another might focus on Sundiata's own predestined spiritual strength. This leads to a quirky and interesting feature within the Griot community itself. Schools of interpretation. Just like modern scholars, different Griot lineages sometimes had their own traditional interpretations of the epics. One family might be known for a more rationalist telling of the story, downplaying the overt magic, while another might be famous for a more mystical, spiritually infused version. These weren't seen as contradictions, but as different facets of the same diamond, each revealing a different kind of light. Bakari pokes the fire, sending a shower of sparks into the night sky. The most important thing to remember, he says, is that the story is a tool. It is meant to be used. It teaches us how to be good, how to rule justly, how to live in community. Does a farmer ask if his hoe is literally true? No, he asks if it works. Our stories work. They have kept our people together for centuries. This is the answer that begins to settle in your mind. Perhaps the question, is it fact or myth, is the wrong question. Perhaps the right question is, what does this story do? The story of Sundiata founded an empire. It provides your legal system with its precedents. It gives every man person a sense of their place in the grand sweep of time. It works. You are not a guardian of facts in the way the scholars of Timbuktu are. You are a guardian of a living truth. A truth that has the power to shape and guide your society. The magic in your stories is real, not because owls can talk, but because the stories themselves can make people brave, can resolve disputes, can legitimize a king, and can turn a group of strangers in a caravan into a community. That is a kind of magic that no book can ever contain. It happens on an ordinary evening, in an ordinary village square. The caravan has stopped for a few days to trade, and, as is now custom, you and Bakari are performing for the locals and your fellow travelers. You have done this 100 times. It is routine, and that is the problem. You are halfway through a familiar section of the epic, recounting the allies who came to join Sundiata for his final war against Sumaora. You are in the flow, the words and music coming effortlessly. You are playing a quick, intricate beery mint in Go on your kora to emphasize the growing strength of the army. And then, for a horrifying, stomach-lurching moment, your mind goes blank. It's the name of the king of the Tror clan, Tira Makontror, one of Sundiata's greatest generals, a name you have spoken thousands of times. But in this moment, it is gone, vanished. There is just nothing. Your fingers freeze on the chorus strings. A single, wrong-sounding note hangs in the air. The rhythm of your song falters. Your mouth opens, but no sound comes out. The silence that follows is the loudest thing you have ever heard. It's only a second, maybe two, but it stretches into an eternity. In that silence, you feel hundreds of eyes on you. You see Bakari's head snap towards you, his own playing continuing on autopilot, but his eyes wide with alarm. You see the faces in the firelight, their expressions shifting from captivated to confused. And then, just as quickly as it left, the name crashes back into your mind. Tiroma, Controller. You blurt out, your voice a little too loud, a little too desperate. You pick up the melody again, your fingers fumbling for a moment before finding their place. You finish the passage, but the magic is broken. The seamless river of history has been dammed, and everyone has seen the crack. You get through the rest of the performance, but your confidence is shattered. Every word feels precarious, every name a potential trapdoor. When you are finally done, you retreat into the shadows, your face burning with shame. You have done the one thing a Jeli must never do. You forgot. Bakari finds you a few moments later. You expect a harsh reprimand. Instead, he just sits beside you, his presence calm and solid in the darkness. It happens, he says quietly. But it can't. You whisper back, your voice choked with humiliation. The story must be perfect. The story is perfect. Bakari replies, we are not. We are human. We are the vessels. And sometimes the vessel cracks. He tells you a story about his own teacher, a legendary Jeli, who in his old age once forgot the name of his own patron's grandfather during a great feast. The shame almost killed him, Bakari says, but it also reminded him that this knowledge we carry is not our own. It is a gift we are borrowing, and we must always treat it with the humility it deserves. Perhaps you have been getting too comfortable, too confident. Tonight, the story reminded you to be humble. This moment of failure teaches you something profound that years of successful recitation never could. It teaches you the visceral, terrifying consequence of a memory lapse. It's not just an error, it's a breach of contract with your audience, with your ancestors, with the story itself. The silence was empty. It was filled with the ghosts of the forgotten. This human fallibility is, in a way, the Achilles heel of any oral tradition. A written text is stable. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't get nervous. It doesn't have a momentary blank. The entire Griot system, from the years of repetitive training to the use of musical mnemonic devices, is a massive, intricate defense against this one single point of failure, the fragility of human memory. A little known and fascinating practice related to this was the concept of the silent prompter. In a very high-stakes performance, such as one before the Mensa, a Master Jeli might have a trusted apprentice or a lesser Jeli behind them. This person's sole job was to listen with intense concentration and, if they saw the master falter for even a heartbeat, to whisper the next word or name. It was an insurance policy, a live backup system. The audience would never even know. It was a formal acknowledgement of the immense pressure and the potential for human error. The debate among historians about the accuracy of oral traditions often centers on this very point. Skeptics argue that over centuries, without a written master copy to check against, significant changes, omissions, and errors must have crept into the histories. Proponents, however, argue that the rigorous training, the use of mnemonics, the public nature of performances, and the system of peer review by other Griots created a tradition with a surprisingly high degree of fidelity. The truth, as is often the case, is likely in the middle. The core elements, the genealogies, the major events, were likely preserved with stunning accuracy, while the finer details of the narrative may have shifted and devolved over time. Your own mistake has shaken you to the core. For the next few nights, you are hesitant, you're playing cautious, but the experience has also forged a new kind of strength in you. You have faced the greatest fear of a Jeli and you have survived. Your relationship with your memory has changed. It is no longer something you take for granted. It is a precious, powerful, and fragile thing. It is a fire that you must tend to with constant vigilance, respect, and a new-found humility. The crack in the vessel has been sealed, and the vessel itself is stronger for it. You return home a different person. You are no longer the boy who left your village a year ago. You have walked the salt road. You have seen the great city of Timbuktu. You have performed for powerful men, and you have felt the cold silence of a forgotten name. You are 15, and you carry yourself with the quiet confidence of someone who has been tested. Your father sees the change in you immediately. He listens to your stories of the journey, not as a teacher listening to a student, but as one professional listening to another. He watches you perform for the village chief, and he notices a new depth in your playing, a new authority in your voice. Your interpretations of the old stories are now colored by your own experiences, your own hard-won wisdom. One evening, he calls you into the kora. His own magnificent instrument is resting in its usual place. He does not pick it up. He looks at you, alone, a praising look. When you tell the story of Sundiata's exile, he says, "I can now hear the dust of the road in your voice." When you sing of the courts of the northern kings, I can hear the echo of Timbuktu's great mosques in your melody. He pauses, and his next words mark the most significant transition of your life. I have taught you the path. Bakari has shown you how to walk it. But from now on, you must choose your own footsteps. A Jeli is not a parrot. A parrot repeats. A Jeli interprets. The story is the river. Your voice is the canoe. I have taught you how to build the canoe and how to paddle. Now you must learn to navigate the currents for yourself. Your training is over. The words hang in the air, both liberating and terrifying. For your entire life, you have followed the path laid out by your father. You have strived to reproduce his knowledge, his style, his intonation, with perfect fidelity. To be told now to find your own voice feels like being pushed out of the canoe in the middle of the river. So, you ask, a question full of a new kind of uncertainty. By living, your father replies simply, and by listening. Listen to the stories of the old women in the market. Listen to the boasts of the young men after the hunt. Listen to the rhythm of the blacksmith's hammer. All of it is part of the great song. Find the parts of the epic that speak to you. When you tell of Sundiata's victory, what do you feel is the most important lesson? His strength, his destiny, his mercy. Your answer will shape your telling. It will become your signature. It is what will make people ask for you to tell the story. Not just any Jeli. This is the final, crucial stage of a Griot's development, the transition from apprentice to master. It is the moment when a Jeli ceases to be a mere repository of tradition and becomes a unique artist and intellectual in their own right. They have proven they can preserve the tradition. Now they must earn the right to contribute to it through their unique style and interpretation. This process of developing a personal style is a fascinating aspect of the Griot's art. While the core facts of the epics were sacrosanct, great performers were known for their individual strengths. One Jeli might be famous for the emotional power of their singing, bringing audiences to tears. Another might be a technical virtuoso on the kora. Their Mandinka flourish as legendary for their speed and complexity. A third might be a master of historical detail, able to recite genealogies of breathtaking depth. Patrons would seek out specific griots for their particular brand. This individuality could even extend to the content of the stories. The master Jeli, confident in their authority, might develop their own unique versions of the lesser-known stories that surround the main epic, adding details or episodes based on their own research, experiences, or artistic vision. This is one of the ways the tradition stayed alive and dynamic. It was not a static text, but a constantly evolving body of narrative, growing unchanging with each new generation of masters. The extent to which a Jeli could truly innovate is, naturally, a subject of academic debate. Was their artistic freedom real, or was it constrained within the very tight boundaries of tradition and patron expectation? Some scholars argue that the style was mostly cosmetic, a different vocal timbre, a faster playing speed, and that the substance of the performance remained rigidly controlled. Others argue that the master Jeli was a true creative artist, a composer and author in the oral sphere, who actively shaped the direction of the tradition. The truth probably lies in the tension between these two poles. The Jeli was at once a faithful preserver and a creative innovator. You begin this new journey tentatively. You start to experiment. You try telling a familiar story with a different emotional emphasis. You compose a new, short song about your journey on the Soul Road, weaving your own experiences into the traditional forms. At first, it feels strange, like wearing someone else's clothes, but slowly, you begin to find a voice that feels like your own. You discover that you have a particular talent for the diplomatic stories, for the tales of mediation and peacemaking. Your time in the caravan has given you a unique insight into the art of bringing people together. This will become your specialty, your signature. Your father watches and listens, offering quiet guidance but never commands. He is letting you find your own way, even if it means you sometimes stumble. He is treating you not as a son, but as his successor. The weight of his legacy is slowly being transferred to your shoulders, but it no longer feels like a burden to be carried. It feels like a mantle you are growing into. Years pass. The boy who was afraid to stand before the elders is now a man in his own right. You have traveled to many courts. Your name is known in many villages, and your kora, once a student's stool, is now an extension of your own soul. It's darkened and polished by the touch of your hands. Your father is an old man now, his voice still full of wisdom but thinner, his fingers not as nimble on the strings. The mantle of your family's history now rests fully on your shoulders. And now, the circle begins again. He is a boy of 7, your sister's youngest son. His name is Musa, and he has your eyes, the same wide, curious, slightly fearful eyes you had at his age. You have seen him watching you for months, a small shadow in the corner of the courtyard when you practice, his head tilted, listening with an intensity that is all too familiar. One afternoon, You are sitting in the shade, registering your kora. He approaches you, hesitant, his bare feet scuffing the dust. He doesn't say anything. He just stares at the kora, at the intricate dance of your fingers as you work. You look at him, and you see yourself. You see the same unspoken question, the same pull towards the river of sound and story. You want to learn. You ask, your voice softer than you intended. He gives a sharp, quick nod, his eyes not leaving the instrument. And so, you become the teacher. You, who spent a lifetime being the student, must now take on the role of the master. It is a strange and profound reversal. You must now find the words to explain things that have become as natural to you as breathing. Your first lesson with Musa takes place in the cool of the pre-dawn, on the same reed mat where you sat with your father. There is no instrument. There is only your voice, calm and steady in the quiet ear. Listen, you say, the word echoing across the years, and you speak a name. Musa repeats it, his small voice a whisper. You look at his face, at the mixture of concentration, confusion, and you feel a surge of emotion so powerful it almost overwhelms you. A mix of love, responsibility, and a sudden, sharp understanding of what your father must have felt all those years ago. You are not just teaching a boy a skill. You are handing him the keys to his identity, to his past, to his entire world. You are initiating another soul into the sacred trust. The process of teaching forces you to re-examine everything you know. You have to break down the fluid, intuitive knowledge in your head into small, digestible pieces. How do you explain the concept of NYMA to a child? How do you describe the feeling of a saute tuning? You find yourself using the same metaphors your father used with you, the same stories, the same patient repetition. You realize that the art of teaching, Jeli itself, is also an oral tradition, passed down from master to apprentice. You see the familiar stages of learning play out in Musa. The initial frustration with rote memorization, the dawning joy when a melody and a story finally click together in his mind, the soreness of his small fingertips as he takes his first clumsy stabs at playing a small student kora, the very same one you learn it on. This master-apprentice relationship is the engine of your entire tradition. It is how this vast and complex body of knowledge has survived for centuries without a single textbook. It's an intensely personal, one-to-one transmission. Unlike a modern classroom with dozens of students, your tradition is cellular, dividing from one to one, ensuring that the nuances, the interpretations, and the unwritten spiritual dimensions of the art are passed along with the raw data. A quirky, little-known detail of this process is that an apprentice often learns it as much from informal observation as from formal lessons. The apprentice would live in the master's household, doing chores, carrying his instrument, and simply being present. They would hear how the master spoke to his patrons, how he negotiated a fee, how he handled a rival. They absorbed the entire professional and social life of a Jeli, not just the technical skills. It was a complete, immersive education in a way of life. Historians often wonder about the emotional dynamics of this relationship. Was it purely pedagogical, or more like a father-son relationship? The evidence from oral traditions themselves suggests it was often an incredibly deep, familial bond, but one that could also be fraught with tension. The apprentice owed the master absolute obedience, and the master held the apprentice's future in his hands. A master could release a student when they were ready, or they could hold them back out of jealousy or fear of being surpassed. You find yourself navigating this complex dynamic with Musa. You feel a paternal love for him, but you also know you must be a stern and demanding teacher. You must push him, test him, and instill in him the same profound respect for the material that was instilled in you. Watching him struggle with a line from the epic, his face scrunched in concentration, you feel the great chain of your lineage stretching back through time. You see your father teaching you, and his father teaching him, and on, a continuous line of voices and hands, stretching back to the time of the Lion King himself. You are no longer just a link in that chain. You are now a forger, tasked with creating the next link, The future of your people's past is sitting in front of you on a reed mat, trying to remember a single name, and your work begins anew. As MUS's training progresses, you find yourself thinking more and more about the tools of your trade. For your entire life, the kora has been your voice, your map, your other heart. But you know it is not the only instrument in the grand orchestra of the Jeli. Your world is wide, and history is sung in many different accents. One day, an old friend of your father's, a Griot from the arid lands to the east, passes through your village. His name is Jeli, and he does not carry a kora. His instrument is the gonai, a small, slender lute with only a handful of strings. Its body carved from a single piece of wood covered in animal hide. It looks like a rustic, ancient ancestor of your elegant 21st string kora. That evening, you and Jeli sit by the fire. He plays his gonai, and the sound is completely different from your kora. It is drier, punchier, more percussive. The notes don't have the long, liquid sustain of your harp lute. The music is earthier, more raw. He sings a story you know well, an episode from the Sundiata epic, but the feeling is different. His gonai playing drives the story forward with a relentless, rhythmic urgency. It sounds less like a courtly epic and more like a desert war song. Musa watches, his eyes wide, fascinated by this new sound. Why is his instrument so different from yours? He asks you later. Because he comes from a different place, with a different history. You explain. The story is the same water, but it flows in a different riverbed. This encounter prompts you to teach Musa, and to remind yourself of the diversity within your own tradition. The kora, while perhaps the most famous Jeli instrument today, is primarily associated with the Mandinka heartlands of the south and west. But the art of Jeli is practiced across a vast swath of West Africa, and different regions have their own signature instruments. You tell Musa about the Bielafin. This is the instrument of Suma Oro Kante himself, the Sorcerer King. It's a type of xylophone, with wooden keys of varying lengths slayed over a frame. Beneath each key hangs a small calabash gourd, which acts as a resonator. The sound is magical, warm, woody, and percussive, yet capable of carrying a beautiful melody. The Bielafin is considered by many Griots to be the oldest of the great instruments, even predating the kora. To play the epic of Sundiata on the Bielafin is to hear it in its most ancient and mythic voice. You explain that the Jeli of a certain region or lineage are often specialists. Your family, the Griots, are traditionally masters of the kora, but another great Jeli clan might be known as the masters of the Bielafin. It's a division of labor, a way of ensuring that all the different instrumental traditions are preserved with the same care and rigor. This specialization is a source of some quirky professional rivalries and debates among Griots. Kora players might gently tease Bielafin players for being old-fashioned, while Bielafin players might view the kora as a newfangled, overly sweet-sounding instrument. Bengali players, with their raw and powerful sound, might see themselves as the keepers of the most authentic, unadorned version of the music. Historians and ethnomusicologists have spent years tracing the family trees of these instruments. Is the gonai a direct ancestor of the American banjo, brought to the New World by enslaved Africans? Is the kora a purely indigenous invention, or was it influenced by harp designs from North Africa or the Middle East? The debates are complex and ongoing. The oral histories of the Griots themselves often contain origin stories for the instruments, linking them to specific culture heroes or spirits. Dios Sobola, a specific Bielafin said to have belonged to Suma Oro Kante himself, is a real artifact, a UNESCO recognized cultural treasure still guarded by a Griot family in Guinea. It is a physical link to the mythic past. By teaching Musa about these other instruments, you are teaching him a vital lesson about his world. You are teaching him that your family has tradition, as important as it is just one voice in a much larger choir. A true Jeli must have an ear for all the different voices. He must understand that the history he is learning can be told with the liquid grace of the kora, the earthy punch of the gonai, or the magical resonance of the Baal-Afan. You realize that your own mastery is incomplete if you do not honor and understand these other streams of the tradition. The next time a traveling Jeli with a Ghana or Baal-Afan comes through your village, you will not just listen with professional curiosity. You will invite them to teach you a song. You will ask them to show you a rhythm, because you understand that every instrument holds a different key to the great shared library of your people, and a true master librarian should know how to open every door. In the evenings, as you teach Musa the old songs under the quiet gaze of the stars, you begin to feel a new and unfamiliar presence in your world. It is not a rival Jeli or a foreign merchant. It is a shadow on the horizon, a whisper on the wind from a place so far away, it feels like another world. It starts with small things. A trader returning from the coast, a long journey to the south, brings back a story not of salt or gold, but of giant ships, as large as a village, with white sails like clouds. He speaks of men with skin the color of peeled yams, who carry strange weapons that make a sound like thunder and spit fire. At first, these are just curious tales, exotic fables to be woven into a song for an evening's entertainment. They feel as distant and unreal as a story about spirits in the deep forest. But the stories become more frequent and more troubling. You hear of coastal villages that have been raided, of people taken onto those great ships, never to be seen again. You hear of new, powerful kings rising along the coast, their wealth not from the old Sultan gold trades that nourished your empire, but from trading in people with these strange men from the sea. A coldness begins to creep into the heart of your community. The low, background home of anxiety. The world, which for centuries had been defined by the great empires of the Sahel, Ghana, Mali, Songhai, and the trade routes that ran north and south, is tilting. A new center of power, a new and dangerous form of trade, is emerging on the coast, far from your influence. You sit with your kora, and for the first time, you feel the limits of your power. Your songs can resolve a dispute between two men chiefs. Your knowledge of the epic can legitimize a king. But what story can you tell against a cannon? What lineage can you recite that will protect a village from the fire of a musket? Your art is based on a shared understanding, a common history, a mutual respect for the ancestors. These new men, these Europeans, do not share your history. They do not know your ancestors, your words, your songs, your authority. They mean nothing to them. They are outside the web of meaning that holds your entire world together. You try to make sense of it in the only way you know how. Through story. You compose a new song, a cautious, questioning one. It's a story about a fisherman who finds a strange, beautiful fish in his net, a fish he has never seen before. He brings it home, dazzled by its colors, but the fish carries a sickness that poisons his whole village. It's a warning, a metaphor for a dangerous novelty that glitters with promise but brings ruin. The people in your village listen, and they nod, but the song does not stop the shadow from growing. This period, the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade and the rise of European colonial influence, marks a profound crisis for the Griot tradition. The very foundations of the society that the Griots served began to crumble. The old empires weakened, fractured by internal strife and the pressure from these new coastal powers. The traditional patrons of the Griots, the kings and wealthy merchants of the old order, lost their power, and with it, their ability to support the arts. One of the lesser-known, tragic consequences of this era was that some Griots were themselves captured and enslaved. Imagine it. A living library, a person holding the history of 1,000 years in their mind, shackled and taken across the ocean. The loss was incalculable. It was not just the loss of a person, but the burning of a library that could never be rebuilt. Historians debate the extent and speed of the decline. Did the Griot tradition collapse quickly, or was it a slow erosion over centuries? The reality is complex. In some areas, especially in the interior where European influence was less direct, the traditions continued with remarkable resilience. But in others, the system of patronage broke down completely. Griots, once the respected advisors to kings, were forced to become simple itinerant entertainers, their deep historical knowledge less valued than a simple kachitung. You feel this change in your own life. Fewer caravans travel the old salt road. The wealth that once flowed from the north now flows from the south. And it is a wealth stained with a sorrow your old songs cannot comprehend. Your role, once so central to the life of the empire, feels precarious. You are the memory of a world that is beginning to fade. You look at Mirza, practicing his scales on the small kora, his face a mask of concentration. You are teaching him the stories of a golden age, the epic of a great, unified empire. But what world will he perform these stories for? Will the name of Sundiata still hold power in a world of muskets and slave ships? A deep, profound sadness settles in your heart. You are a Jeli, a guardian of the past. But for the first time, you are more afraid of the future. The song of your people is a beautiful, ancient melody, but you can hear a new, dissonant note on the wind, a sound of thunder in chains that threatens to drown it out forever. The shadows on the horizon have grown long, casting a twilight chill over the world you knew. The great empires are fractured, ghosts of their former glory. The new powers on the coast, fueled by their trade with the men from the sea, have redrawn the maps of wealth and influence. You are an old man now. Your hands are knotted with age, and your voice is a dry rasp. But the library in your mind is still vast. Its shelves laden with the memories of a world that is slipping away. Musa is a man now, a master Jeli in his own right. He is more skilled on the kora than you ever were. His fingers faster, his melodies more intricate. But his life is harder than yours was. The great patrons are gone. He does not perform for kings or wealthy salt merchants. He prays in the dusty courtyards of small-town chiefs, at noisy weddings, and sometimes, just for a handful of coins in a crowded marketplace. He is respected, yes, but as a musician, an entertainer, the role of royal advisor, of sitting law book, of diplomat, those functions have withered along with the society that required them. One evening, you sit with him outside your hut. He has just returned from a long journey, and he looks weary, a sadness in his eyes that you recognize. They do not listen to the stories anymore, he says, his voice low. They listen to the rhythm. They clap their hands. They dance. But when I sing the lineage of the Griots, their eyes glaze over. It is just a list of old names to them. It does not feel like their own. You look at him, at this man who holds the soul of his people in his memory, and you feel a profound sorrow. You have passed on the knowledge, but you have not been able to pass on the world in which that knowledge was supreme. So what is the point? Musa asks, the question hanging in the quiet air between you. Why carry this great weight in my head if no one values it anymore? Why not just play the sweet melodies that make them dance? This is the question that has haunted your final years. What becomes of a memory when the world it remembers is gone? What is the purpose of a library that no one visits? You reach out and place your old, wrinkled hand on his, because it is not theirs to value. You say, your voice finding a spark of its old strength. It is ours to keep. We do not do this for them. We do it for the ancestors. We do it for Sundiata. We do it because without this story, we are just people who live on this patch of earth. With this story, we are the man. The story is our soul. Whether they listen or not, we must sing it. To stop singing would be to let our soul die. In that moment, you understand the final evolution of your role. You are no longer an advisor, a diplomat, a lawmaker. You have become something both simpler and more profound. You are a vessel of cultural survival. Your legacy will not be carved on a monument or written in a book of history by the new conquerors. Your legacy is an echo. It is a melody. It is the breath in Mus as long as he sings a name. This resilience of the Griot tradition is its most remarkable, and perhaps least celebrated, feature. Despite centuries of colonialism, political upheaval, and social change, the tradition did not die. It adapted. It transformed. It went underground. retreating into the heart of the family and the village. But it survived. Griots became the frontline soldiers in a war of cultural preservation. Historians have noted this incredible tenacity. While the political and economic functions of the Jeli were diminished, their role as cultural custodians became even more critical. They were the ones who kept the languages, the music, the stories, and the sense of identity alive when everything else was being threatened or erased. They ensured that even if the body of the empire was colonized, its soul would remain free. A fascinating, modern manifestation of this is how Griot music has become one of West Africa's greatest gifts to the world. Musicians from Griot families have traveled the globe, playing on the world's biggest stages. Their kora and Baal often enchanting audiences who may not understand a word they are singing, but who can feel the deep, ancient power in the music. The tradition has found a new kind of patronage. The entire world. You will not live to see this. Your world is here, in this small village, under this vast, starry sky. You look at Mirza, and you see that your words have rekindled a light in his eyes. He will not give up. He will keep singing the songs. He will teach his own children. The chain will not be broken. You think about your own legacy. It is not in the silver coins you earned or the praise you receive. Your legacy is alive. It is in Mus's hands, in his memory, in his voice. You have passed the fire on. It may burn smaller and in darker places for a time, but it will not go out. Your life has been a testament to a single, powerful idea, that a people are not truly defeated as long as one person is left to sing their story. The sun feels warmer on your skin these days, or perhaps it is just that your own blood runs a little cooler. You spend most of your time sitting in the shade of the great baobab tree, the same tree under which you watched your father perform so many years ago. Your kora rests beside you, more a companion than an instrument now. Your fingers are too stiff to dance across the strings with their old fire, but sometimes you pluck a single, soft note, and the memory of 1,000 melodies washes over you. You are a fixture in the village, an ancient landmark. The children, Mus's children among them, sometimes gather at your feet. They ask for stories. You don't have the breath for the great epics anymore. Instead, you tell them the small stories, the fables of the clever heron, the foolish hyena, the stories that teach the simple truths. Be kind, be clever, be courageous. Remember who you are. One evening, as the sky turns a deep, bruised purple, Musa comes to sit with you. He has his own kora, a magnificent instrument he has had for many years. He doesn't speak. He just begins to play. He plays for you. He plays the old songs, the deep and serious melodies and the sauté tuning. He plays the story of Sundiata, the Lion King. His voice is strong and clear. His playing masterful. He is not just reciting. He is interpreting. His performance filled with a lifetime of his own joy and sorrow. As you listen, the veil of time seems to thin. You are not just an old man sitting under a tree. You are a boy again, listening in awe to your father. You are a young man on the salt road, feeling the thrill of the wide-open world. You are a respected Jeli in the court of a great merchant, your voice filled with power and purpose. You are a teacher, seeing the spark of understanding in a young boy's eyes. All of your lives, all the stories you have lived and told, are present in this one moment, woven into the music floating on the evening air. Musa sings of the final battle, of Sundiata, this victory in the founding of the great Mali Empire. He sings of the peace and prosperity that followed, of the order that was brought to the world. It is a story of a golden age, a time of strength and unity. And though the world outside this village no longer resembles that golden age, the story's power is undiminished. It is a reminder of what was, and therefore, what could be again. It is a seed of hope, planted in the soil of memory. The song is not just a history. It is an act of defiance against the shadows. It is a declaration that even if empires fall and borders change, the soul of a people, carried in a song, can endure. It is an endless song. This, you realize, is the ultimate purpose of the Jeli. not just to remember the past, but to use the past to give meaning to the present and courage for the future. The griot is the thread that stitches the generations together, creating a single, continuous fabric of identity. You are part of that fabric. Your father is part of it. Musa is part of it, and his children, listening now from the doorway of the hut, will one day be part of it too. The final notes of the kora fade into the soft hum of the insects. A deep peace settles over you. Your work is done. The library is safe. The songs are in good hands. The chain is unbroken. You close your eyes, and the music carries you, a gentle current on the endless river of time. The song goes on.